Hey everyone, my name is Josh and welcome back to your fourth stimulus package and news update. We have a lot of news to get into in today's video, but first, if you would like to receive 1 free stock from Robinhood and 2 free stocks from Webull, valued up to over $2,000, make sure to claim them by clicking my links, which you will find in the description box below. Okay, so Democrats continue to kick the can, which is Build Back Better down the road, as they work towards achieving a piece of legislation dealing with voter rights. How far they can kick the can is yet to be known. However, some Senate Democrats said yesterday that they expect President Biden to restart talks with Joe Manchin after a cooling off period, which will most likely be when they finish debate on voting rights. During a lunchtime meeting for the Senate Democrats, they all agreed that they needed to take a deep breath, step back, and try to reapproach Build Back Better with a more level head. By doing this, they hope that President Biden, Joe Manchin, and everyone else can cool off and hopefully reach some type of an agreement. Senate Majority Leader Schumer also told reporters on Tuesday that he expects Biden and senior White House officials to resume negotiations with Manchin at some point in the near future. Next week, on the 12th, it is expected that inflation data for December will be released, which should be interesting to see. Has it cooled off any at all, or is it continuing to stay high? This will also be data I'm sure Manchin will pay close attention to, being that inflation was one of the major reasons he's been opposed to spending another $2 trillion. Other than that, he's also been opposed to extending the child tax credit for just one more year, because he says that's a gimmick to make the bill seem cheaper. Instead, he would like for Democrats to work with Republicans to extend the credit for 10 more years, while also being able to claim that it's bipartisan. Other than that, the West Virginia Democrat will also need to work out an agreement with President Biden and the rest of the Democrats for what should be included to combat climate change. Then, between Democrats themselves, they'll need to work out a figure for the new state and local tax deduction. Currently, in the House bill, it was raised to $80,000, which Republicans and even some Democrats say mainly benefits the wealthy. In their eyes, this would be a tax break for the rich. However, Democrats in higher tax states such as California and New Jersey say the current system is unfair for their citizens because in their states, they already pay high enough taxes. Being that they're unable to reduce their tax bill at the federal level, they believe they're being unfairly discriminated against. So lots to discuss on that front as well. So while Democrats push Build Back Better back a couple more weeks, today they look to push their voter right bills. Being that it's the 1-year anniversary of January 6th, Democrats look to lump all Republicans together as being responsible for the storming of the Capitol and say that the GOP is opposing voter rights to keep minorities from voting. Here is Senate Majority Leader Schumer railing against Republicans for opposing their voting right bills.
Now, Mr. President, earlier this morning I had the opportunity to join my colleagues in the Senate Rules Committee for a hearing on the progress our Capitol has made to increase the security of this complex in the aftermath of January 6th. We heard testimony from U.S. Capitol Chief of Police Thomas Manger, who in his first 6 months has done an outstanding job to make this building safer and better prepared for the sort of horrors that befell this hallowed space only 1 year ago this week. That day, on January 6th, 2021, the men and women of our Capitol Police stood on the front lines of the unimaginable, a violent assault upon the U.S. Capitol, instigated by former President Trump and carried out by a mob of radicals looking to halt the peaceful transfer of power. That day, our Capitol policemen were outnumbered and under-equipped. Yet their bravery and quick thinking saved many lives and prevented a violent riot from becoming something even worse. Today we honor all those who stepped up that day, especially those who we've lost in the aftermath. And make no mistake, the root cause of January 6th are still with us today. It lives on through the big lie pushed by Donald Trump that is undermining faith in our political system and making our country and our democracy less safe. A year after January 6th, the biggest threat to our Capitol Police, and our democracy today is the big lie perpetrated by Donald Trump. And without addressing the root causes of the events of January 6th, the insurrection will not be an aberration. It could well become the norm. Just like the Senate has the power to pass legislation supporting our Capitol Police Force, we have the same power and obligation to pass legislation to address these root causes that brought the big lie to life. That is what my Senate colleagues and I are focused on. That is what my Democratic colleagues and I are focused on and are committed to doing. And we must act. More than any other point in recent history, threats of political violence are on the rise. Election administrators are facing harassment and even death threats for just carrying out their duties. Every member of the United States Senate is called to do the same, to reckon with the lessons of that terrible day and take action to cure America of the disease of the big lie. That means passing legislation to protect our democracy from subversion and safeguard the right to vote, including the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. Last year, Senate Democrats tried multiple times to get voting rights passed with bipartisan cooperation. Many of us, especially my colleague Senator Manchin, tried in good faith to bring the other side to the table. But every single time, Republicans mounted a partisan filibuster to stop this chamber from even having a debate on these measures. By now, Republicans have made it abundantly clear that bipartisanship is not an option when it comes to voting rights. That is against the grand tradition where the Voting Rights Act had gotten the support of President Reagan and President H.W. Bush and President Bush, and got large bipartisan margins when it was renewed in the past. But that's not true anymore. This is the new Republican Party under Donald Trump. If this continues, the only option left for Democrats is to explore and propose reasonable fixes to restore the Senate so we can get these critical pieces of legislation passed into law. We will consider proposals to restore the Senate on or before January the 17th.
On the other hand, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell says that Democrats are inventing some sort of crisis in order to take over democracy. McConnell believes these voting rights bills aren't necessary and that all this is just fake outrage.
As 2022 gets underway, working Americans and their families are facing a steady stream of significant challenges. The fastest growing inflation in almost 40 years. Violent crime rates that continue to rise, with many of our largest cities setting new all-time records for murders. A southern border that remains in crisis. A new highly contagious variant of the virus that President Biden promised he would personally crush. Too few tests and too slow new treatments on this administration's watch. And another rolling wave of school shutdowns as big labor bosses continue to make hostages out of children's futures over a virus that leaves children largely unharmed. Late last year, one poll asked Americans about the most important problems facing the country. Some were most worried about the high cost of living. Others said, not surprisingly, the pandemic. 1/5 of respondents, the most by far, said the biggest issue was poor leadership at a time when the Democratic Party controls the entire government. But, Mr. President, you know what wasn't on the list of concerns? Wasn't there at all. The fictional, scary stories that liberal activists keep repeating about how democracy is at death's door. The November 2020 election had the highest turnout in 120 years. 94% of voters said voting was easy. Only 33% of Americans say it is currently too hard for eligible voters to vote. And a larger number than that actually say current laws are too loose. Too loose. The American people are not buying this nonsensical talk of Jim Crow 2.0 or a voting rights crisis. Everybody apart from left-wing activists and the press understands this emperor has no clothes at all. A few months ago, even voters in blue New York rejected multiple ballot measures to soften up election laws the way liberal activists prefer. This fake outrage is just a predicate for Washington Democrats to do something they have sought to do literally for years: appoint themselves a nationwide board of elections on steroids. This is the takeover that Democrats have sought for multiple years using multiple different justifications. It's not a voting rights bill, it's a sprawling, sweeping takeover of our democracy. Our colleagues' bills would do things like forcing all 50 states, all of them, to legalize corrupt ballot harvesting. They'd have the government send public funds directly to political campaigns. The same Attorney General who has frivolously sued Texas just to placate the White House, whose Department of Justice tries to intimidate parents, would be handed new power to micromanage election law. Some early drafts of this bill tried to literally, openly turn the Federal Election Commission into an outright partisan body. Talk about tipping your hand. These changes wouldn't bolster faith in our democracy or in our institutions. It would do exactly the opposite. It would be a civic wrecking ball. And listen, that's before you consider that Senate Democrats want to destroy our own institution to ram this through. The current Senate Democratic leader once said that nuking filibuster rules would be a, quote, doomsday for democracy, end quote. Just a few years ago, more than 30 Senate Democrats joined a bipartisan letter supporting the legislative filibuster. President Biden defended the principle in long, passionate speeches throughout his entire career. Just last year, as president, he repeated that destroying the filibuster would, quote, throw the entire Congress into chaos. He certainly was right about that. There's no partial or limited nuclear option on the table. As the senator for West Virginia put it yesterday, whenever you start talking about carving things out, you end up eating the entire turkey. No party that would trash the Senate's legislative traditions can be trusted to seize control over election laws all across America. Nobody who is this desperate to take over our democracy on a one-party basis can be allowed to do it. Finally, it is beyond distasteful for some of our colleagues to ham-fistedly invoke the January 6th anniversary to advance these aims. Washington Democrats have been trying to seize control over elections for years. Their first draft of the legislation at hand was introduced in January of 2019. The fact that violent criminals broke the law does not entitle Senate Democrats to break the Senate. It is surreal to hear sitting senators invoke January the 6th to justify, listen to this, to justify breaking rules to grab outcomes they have not earned. I'm going to say that again. It is surreal to hear sitting senators invoke January the 6th to justify breaking the rules to grab outcomes they have not earned. It is surreal to hear sitting senators invoke January the 6th to argue that institutions can be trampled because they'd like a different result. A year ago, the Senate didn't bend and it didn't break. We held strong. It is jaw-dropping for colleagues to propose to commemorate that by breaking the Senate themselves in a different way. A year ago, there was a lot of talk on this floor about protecting the norms and institutions of our democracy, about putting long-term bipartisan traditions ahead of short-term partisan power. Someday soon, it appears, we may learn which of us actually really meant it.
So, in your opinion, what are the biggest concerns for you with this country moving forward? Let me know what you think our biggest concerns are in the comment section below. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Again, if you would like to receive 1 free stock from Robinhood and 2 free stocks from Webull, make sure to claim them by clicking my links in the description box below. So once again, I do hope that everyone has a great and safe rest of their day. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.